Welcome to the next episode of the Existential Files.
Ooh.
Hello, Louie.
Hello, Matthew.
Today, as you probably will know, is Groundhog Day.
It is?
And I'd like to talk a little bit about it, if that's okay with you. But to begin with, a route into it may be just linking to a blog post you posted not so long ago. And remind me, I've been asking you what the title is, I keep getting it wrong. Is it Thus...
Thus spake out of my ass.
Okay, so I'm not in the context of this discussion, unless it's particularly important. Well, tell me why you chose that title for that particular blog post.
Well, I do have a little tiny bit on Nietzsche at the end. I mean, I did read a little bit of Nietzsche last year, I think. Thus spake Zarathustra, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah, go on.
About a prophet who spends, or a guy, and he spends 10 years, I believe, sitting on a mountain, contemplating existence, and he says, he goes, I understand everything now, you know, fuck it, I'm going to go and tell everybody what it's all about. And he comes back down and he starts telling people all about life. And you know, I end that post with one of his aphorisms, one of his things, which I thought was, I very much agree with. And in the context of the post, I think it connects together some of the ideas of what that post is.
Is that something you can tell us now?
Yes, very. Yeah. I mean, whether it's related to Groundhog Day is another matter. It's merely the aphorism is, you know, as human beings are to apes, as the overman is to the human being.
Okay.
To get what I get from that is that, you know, apes are an embarrassment to human beings, and the human beings are an embarrassment to the overman, the ubermensch, whatever, you know, the Superman.
Okay, so and that is actually a quote from, is it Thus Spake Zarathustra?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
So it was that linked to Thus Spoke or Spake Zarathustra is what I was interested in, and because I understand it, and again, this is from a fairly kind of surface reading of not so much Nietzsche itself, but writings about it, that one of the themes within that, at least some of his writing, and maybe that one included, is this idea of eternal recurrence or eternal return.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I would sort of frame it, that he talks about this idea that, well, I think also the idea of eternal return is in lots of other kind of philosophies and religions, and maybe even some elements of science, though it may not be quite such a in favor these days. But this idea that if space is infinite and time is infinite, and that could be a question we could discuss, but on the assumption that it is, then essentially everything, the probability of anything happening again in the same way it's already happened is greater than one. Sorry, it's greater than zero.
Mm.
So therefore, the idea is that everything that's happening will happen again, will happen again, will happen again infinitely. And I think, okay, whether or not you buy into that, even if you go down the route of saying, well, imagine a thought experiment, if you were going to lead your life and then you die, and then you get to repeat it again and again and again, infinitely, then does that thought fill you with joy or with fear? And there probably is some, so much if I can find a quote. Maybe I need you to speak a little bit. Well, here we... no, I'm not having the quote to hand, but it's just simply the idea that, well, here's one of them. What if someday or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness to say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? So to put in other words, the idea of repeating your life an infinite number of times, the same way you've always lived it and living it now, does that fill you with some sense of, you know, oh, you've been cursed? Or is that some sort of divine amazingness? Is a word I made up.
Mm.
And I think that idea is essentially what's in Groundhog Day, which is, okay, it's not a lifetime, it's a single day repeated again and again and again. And the impression is it is done either an infinite number of times, or more likely, maybe, I think it's implied, it could be over maybe 100 years. So the same day repeated over 100 years. Does that idea fill you with utter dread? which in Groundhog Day, it is. He spends all this time thinking, well, we're stuck in the same day again and again and again and again and again, to the point now when people talk about, oh, it's like Groundhog Day, when things just keep repeating. And his kind of revelation is that over time, he starts changing how he is in his daily life. And it's almost as if it's that finally, towards the very end of the film, without giving too much away, spoiler alert, he releases it to be able to continue to the next day. And maybe in the context of the film, it's relating to things like finding love or being your best self, whatever it might be. So I would say as well, some of the ideas there are also now nicely described in a book called The Wisdom of Groundhog Day. I think the author is Paul Hannam, who has then tried to draw upon some of the ideas in Groundhog Day and turning it into what can we learn from that. And I think the subtitle of the book is How We Can Change Our Lives a Day at a Time. So that's where, and again, because I think it's this idea of eternal return or a thought experiment, which essentially is behind Groundhog Day. So that's why I was linking it to that phrase that is either from that particular writing, and I think when you read about some of the writings about Nietzsche, is this idea of eternal return seems to show up in a few places of his writing. So there.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think. I mean, for me, isn't it that every day we make choices, and as soon as we've made that choice, we can never really know how it would have gone the other way. And I think that there is always that, one of the things in my PhD, for example, was the question of seeing into the future. And I make a distinction that I was looking at actually seeing into a real future, as opposed to, thinking prospectively about what is going to happen if I do this, what is going to happen if I do that. And obviously, as soon as we've made a decision, as soon as we've made a choice, as soon as we enact something, we're suddenly, we can think, well, how would it have gone the other way? And I mean, I wonder. I'm reminded of a story that is important to me. Is the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and it's the idea of is the field on the other side of the bridge? Is it the better field? And of course, I think the future. The choice not made is sometimes looks as though it's the field, that maybe we should have gone to, especially if you have a lifetime of regrets. I mean, of course, if you're a lottery winner, you don't wish that you'd picked a different number. But for the rest of us who didn't win the lottery, of course, if we just chosen a different number, if our birthday just been on a different day, we have that, what if, and what ifs can be, can be a source of trauma, or they can be a source of pain.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded of, I think it's a cartoon. Well, it is a cartoon. No, I think it's a cartoon. It's a single image cartoon of the man who's walking along, and it's a kind of dark alley, and it's pointing ahead saying, the life you live, or the life you lead, and it's going past a slightly brighter alleyway, pointing and saying, the life you could have led. So there was another possibility what he could have done differently, and it would have been a very different life. And often, yes, when people engage in, and this is where the kind of psychology comes in here, what psychologists have referred to as counterfactual thinking. So comparing what might have happened to what they imagine could have happened is actually often a central, let's say, psychological process people engage in to make sense of events. I've explored it to some extent in the context of luck. When people perceive an event as being lucky or unlucky, to some extent they're saying, well, could it have been better? Could it have been worse? So when people get involved in car crashes, but are actually
wait, hold on, you broke up then. So you went, well, and we had a
I just said was probably the most profound thing ever. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine. So you said, well,
I don't remember. I was talking about counterfactual thinking, and in psychological terms, then when we compare things that might have happened, so what actually happened, what might have happened, or we think might have happened, that can lead us to consider whether an event is lucky or unlucky, good or bad. And as you're saying, we make a sense of what's actually happening, what our lives are, how things are right now, by sensing or having some thoughts about, well, how might it be different? So I think that's the idea, I'm guessing, from your suggestion of the Billy Goat's Gruff idea, is that the grass is always green. You imagine that, oh, well, if I do this thing, things are going to become better. And I would say in the context of Groundhog Day, it's like, well, even if you change little things about your life, whether it becomes better or worse or not, if you have, and I would say the right intent behind it, and you're opening up to certain situations, it is quite dramatic how then the world seems to change around you. That people will, of course, what you give out is what you get, that kind of idea. So what seeing in the film, Phil Connors, who's the main character, is starting off as being a kind of cynical, grumpy, let's say broadly selfish man who's kind of in it for himself. That motivates him for much of the film, really, or the story. And in time, he's learning that actually, no matter what I do, I'm stuck with this day. How can I live it the best possible way? And in time, he's starting to do things for other people. He recognize he can bring joy to other people by doing certain things. It's often drawing upon ideas that we now see within positive psychology, things you can be grateful for. So I think there's a lot of psychology there, which may be small steps to whether you see it as making your life better, or at least seeing the world around you in a different way that can have an impact upon, you know, how you interact with the world, and again, sometimes how the world interacts back with you. That's my take on it.
Sure. And obviously, I mean, like from my perspective, I think that continuously thinking that the choices that you haven't made, you know, the grass being green, I think that can be a very, you know, have a very negative effect on your life, you know, because you have to, realistically speaking, you know, the outcome is probably going to be very similar, you know, to the outcome you find yourself in having made that choice. And I think continuously second guessing your choices. You know,
well, yeah. Well, so yes, I agree. The second guessing your choices is not necessarily the kind of the route to go. Yeah, I'd also wanted to at least explore it. Maybe not time on this particular one, but I think it is caught a little bit in the film Groundhog Day, and there are other similar films that do show that, again, well, you never get to know what would have happened if you had done something otherwise. So if I had done this act rather than that act, or I had made that call, not making the call, is that you feel that actually most of the time it won't make much difference. I would argue there are plenty of times in your life, though, when you have those moments which, to make reference to another film, is almost like a sliding doors moment. So you either get on the train or you don't get on the train, or you go to that particular party or you don't go to that particular party, the party at which you then meet somebody who then becomes a partner, who then becomes maybe the parents of your children and so on, and your whole life shifts. So I can go back to a phone call that I received in my office in Liverpool, whichever year it was, that led to a whole chain of events that meant I met Rachel, who then we got married and we've had children, and my whole life is such that hangs in many places on a phone call. Now, I don't know that if that phone call had never taken place, would I have still met Rachel? I never get to know that. So I think there's definitely something that's not particularly helpful about, second guessing, will it make a difference or not? I also think there are, if you reflect on events in one's life, in your own life, that you can at least identify some that relate to people that you meet, perhaps where you're living, choices of jobs. They are influenced by seemingly little decisions. You think, if I'd done that or not done that, would it made much difference? I think you can think of lots that actually, when you start piecing them together, there is a whole series of choices that do actually have quite a huge impact on your life.
And I don't disagree with you. Obviously, you know, there are, I mean, I met my partner in a bar in Barbados, you know, and because I'd quit my job, then I walked into a bar and started chatting her up. And then 10 years later, you know, we're kind of still together. And I mean, obviously that wouldn't have happened without a very specific set of circumstances. I think the only thing is that I do think if those events hadn't happened, other events would have happened and other outcomes would have happened. And we would be, I think in some ways, we would be feeling the same way about those events. And that's the way I see it, is that, you know, I think, and I'm not diminishing what you have or what I have, you know, and I'm not diminishing your children, but, you know, I mean, I was saying this last night. I mean, when we ejaculate, when we ejaculate, there are 50 million sperm.
You have to sometimes warn me, Louie.
Sorry. Well, when we ejaculate, there are 50 million sperm or however many sperm, and each one of those is vying to be a person. And, you know, I think we can all agree that, you know, we only have a small number of children, if any, but, you know, there are plenty of possibilities there. And, you know, I think from my perspective, all I'm saying is, I don't think it really matters which one of those becomes a person. But of course, when they do become people, they are individuals and unique. So, you know.
Yeah, and I think you're using that example to say, you know, we have a multitude of choices all the time and stuff that happens to us. that will then carve out or influence the course of events, and therefore we are where we are today because of all those things happening.
Sure.
Absolutely. And I'm not necessarily saying the value of going back and saying, oh, well, imagine how things could have been different, and therefore you could spend your life thinking, oh, if I'd only done this and done that. Well, that's not particularly helpful. If you bring it to the present day, every single day, as we see in the film Groundhog Day, is an opportunity to make choices one way or the other. Turn left, turn right, say yes, say no, whichever way you want to see it. And I think when you start being aware of that, it's not a case of going back and thinking, oh, if only I'd made this differently, it may have turned out all very differently, or it may well be much the same, or we'd feel about the situation that we're in, that situation, in the same way we feel about this one. There's still a sense of every day that passes and every moment that passes, there are choices to be made. And I think when you become aware of that, you start to actually notice that by acting in a certain way will have one set of consequences. Acting in a different way has a different set of consequences. And yes, you'd never get to know, oh, how similar are they? How different are they really? In the end, do we all get to the same place anyway? Because you can argue, it doesn't matter what you do. In the end, in the long run, we're all dead. So you're going to get to death. That's going to happen unless you figure out some way to achieve immortality. But in the meantime, your choice of the story or how you respond to the things that happen does have an impact. And I would say there's plenty of examples of relatively small decisions or choices or events can subsequently have quite a dramatic impact. And we don't necessarily know, we can't easily measure it because we can imagine how it may have been different, but it's all imagination. We can compare things, how they might be better, how it may be worse, broadly similar, or beyond comparison, you can't even imagine them. And it's just recognizing, I would say, in every day, there are those choices. And that was, I would say, would be one of the big messages of Groundhog Day.
Well, there you go.
And on that note, we'll pause this one and I'll pick up some of these themes in the next one, or we'll obviously wait for all those multitude of comments that are going to come in and tell us that we've got it all wrong.
Okay, happy Groundhog Day to you then.
Happy Groundhog Day to you too.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.